Before the wig and the dress coat, there were rivers, arterial rivers. There were cordilleras, jagged waves, where the condor and the snow seemed immutable. There was dampness and dense growth. The thunder, as yet unnamed, the planetary pampas. Man was dust, earthen vase, an eyelid of tremulous loam, the shape of clay. He was carob jug, chibca's stone, imperial cup of Araucanian silica. Tender and bloody was he, but on the grip of his weapon of moist flint, the initials of the earth were written. No one could remember them afterward. The wind forgot them. The language of water was buried. The keys were lost, or flooded with silence or blood. Life was not lost, pastoral brothers, but like a wild rose, a red drop fell into the dense growth, and a lamp of earth was extinguished. I am here to tell the story, from the peace of the buffalo to the pummeled sands of the Land's End in the accumulated spray of the Antarctic light. And through precipitous tunnels of shady Venezuelan peacefulness, I search for you, my father, young warrior of darkness and copper, or you, nuptial plant, indomitable hair, mother caiman, metallic dove. I, Incan of the loam, touched the stone and said, "Who awaits me?" And I closed my hand around a fistful of empty flint. But I walked among zapotic flowers, and the light was soft like a deer, and the shade was a green eyelid. My land without name, without America, equinautical stamen, purple lance, your aroma climbed my roots, up to the glass raised to my lips, up to the slenderest word as yet unborn in my mouth.
Hello, I'm Andrea.
And I'm Esther, and this is Crash Course, Professor Moment, the Mrs. Hufford Special Edition.
So today we will talk about Pablo Neruda's poem, Amor, America.
So Pablo Neruda was a Chilean poet, diplomat, and a politician, who is perhaps the most important Latin American poet of the 20th century. Amor, America is the opening of the epic poem Canto General.
Throughout Canto General, Neruda mixes his communist sympathies with national pride. It is a depiction of Latin American history as a grand continuous struggle against oppression.
The first stanza starts by setting the time and place before the wig and the dress coat, which refers to America before it was settled and before the arrival of Spaniards. Neruda reminisces the natural scenery of a country, describing complex winding arterial rivers, cordilleras, waves, condors, and plains. He says the snow seemed immutable, meaning it seemed unchanging, or seemed to be unable to be changed. The landscape was so much in its original state that even the sound of thunder was yet unnamed. Moving on to the second stanza, Neruda continues to describe a time before colonizers when man, specifically the indigenous peoples, lived as one with nature. Man was dust, earth and vase, describes how earth's dust was within man and how man crafted with earth. The Carib are American Indian people who inhabited the Antilles and parts of South America. Chibcha was the language spoken by the Muisca people and indigenous cultures of the Americas. Araucanian were a group of Indian peoples of south-central Chile. Neruda describes the earthen elements of the landscape adjacently to and in conjunction to the names and cultures of its indigenous inhabitants. They were so one with nature. Even a man-made weapon contained initials of the earth. In the next stanza, no one could remember them afterward could refer to the erasure of these indigenous peoples by newcomers, their culture, their existence silenced, wiped clean through violence. It could also refer to the fact that the people had been so kind to nature that their removal left little to no trace. Stanza 4 talks about the struggle of the indigenous people. Life was not lost, still maintains hope that the culture remained, even with the arrival of the new people. He equates their plight to that of a wild rose, which survives despite time and death. However, the red drop signifies violence, and hence loss of life. With the extinguishing of the native people, there too was the extinguishing of the lamp of earth.
In the fifth stanza, Neruda identifies himself with the indigenous people. I search for you, my father, young warrior of darkness and copper, he writes in Amor, America. In the poem, all indigenous people, peaceful and belligerent alike, are his fathers, and he is their son. Amor, America's sixth stanza continues with the majestic vision of the Incan warrior. Young warrior of darkness and copper, nuptial plant, indomitable hair, mother caiman, metallic dove. Such imagery enhances Neruda's respect and admiration for his cultural roots. He proclaims, I, Incan of the loam, The Empire cultivated vast lands with crops including maize, coca, beans, grains, potatoes, tomatoes, peanuts, cashews, squash, and they raised llama and alpaca herds. The Incas were ambitious farmers, and to maximize agricultural production, they transformed the landscape with terracing, canals, and irrigation networks. Additionally, they utilized crop rotation practices and fertilized the fields. These major advancements heavily contributed to the development of a powerful empire in which Neruda prides his heritage to. In the following stanzas, Neruda takes an almost indignant tone as he reminisces about the long extinct empires of the Americas. He asks, "Who awaits me?" And I close my hand around a fistful of empty flint. Neruda expresses the longing for these glorious civilizations and the terrible sadness that comes with their extinction. However, the second half of the stanza relays hope through the zapoic flowers and the emitting of soft lights. The Zapotecs, a Native American group in southern Mexico, were ultimately destroyed by Spanish invaders. Nonetheless, these flowers remain to remind future generations about the forgotten past. With the addition of various lights and shades of green, Neruda provokes the message that not everything is lost.
Thank you for listening to our crash course. We'll see you next week.
For this interview, I took another step. Rather than interviewing Americans, I decided to interview multiple nationalities and cultures, specifically Canadians and Australians. I hope that their stories give you guys another perspective on how Paul Neruda's poems may have been interpreted. Thank you.
My name's Anthony.
Hi, my name's Afrik.
I'm 17. I'm from Australia and I'm Vietnamese.
I'm Singapore, living in Australia. I'm 18.
I'm Elijah. Hi, I'm Nicholas. I live in Canada and my ethnicity is Jamaican. I am 18, almost 19. Turned 19 in 2 days.
I am 18, Filipino, and I'm also a Canadian.
Living in Australia has a little bit of impact of how I view my culture, but not too much because for my family at least, we like to express our culture a lot by having all the family gatherings and all the traditional stuff we do. Even though it's not to the extent that we would normally do, it's still like better than nothing.
All right, so when I was younger, because I was naive and ignorant, like any other kid, I used to think Jamaica wasn't really like caught up in terms of like things like technology or housing compared to Canada. Now I've only been there once, and it's a complete turnaround. So my entire world is basically flipped. This was like years back when I went, but no, it's actually near enough the same. Only it looks nicer. It has like way nicer views. The culture is so much deeper there compared to, or I can relate to the culture a lot more than I can in Canada. But I think being in Canada and being surrounded by a whole different clash of culture, it kind of like just made me perceive Jamaica in a different way, that it was like less than, but it was completely not the case. And to this day, I still kind of reflect on that.
For me, I think Canada, or being in Canada, has changed my look on the Philippines in the sense that I thought when I was younger, being white per se, or Caucasian, however you wanna, identify it as, was normal, and I kind of thought like, oh, being Filipino or being Asian was just like weird, right? And it's true in the sense that like, there's way less Filipinos than there are Caucasians in Canada, but I genuinely thought that like that's how it was like around the world, and being again a Filipino was just different, the most different that you can be. So in that sense, yes, being in Canada changed my outlook on the Philippines. Yeah.